you doing, babe? I hope you're well. Me? I'm thinking about our favorite topic on this podcast. Trauma. Okay, I have a story for you. And it's going to be a bit of a hard story to get through without having feelings about what happened to me. But I want you to keep in mind that things were different while I was growing up. So, well, you understand once I tell this story. When I was a kid, I had this weird feeling inside of me, as if I wasn't quite a boy or a girl. It's kind of hard to explain. It was just like I didn't really fit in with everyone else, and I tried my best to fit in with everyone else. But, I grew up in the hood and, in the Black community, and things were just totally different back then. So, growing up, it kind of being not really a only child, but in a family of four siblings, counting me, 5 kids, and not really having anyone to connect to my age because everyone else was older. I kind of stayed to myself and I kind of did my own thing. And one of the things I did in my spare time was I like to dress up like a girl. I can't quite explain why I felt that way. I just didn't really relate to boys or men as well as I did with women for some reason. But I found myself really connecting to the ideal of being a girl. And I had this persona in my head, a character named Janet, based on Janet Jackson. And I would dress up in dresses and stuff like that I found around the house. And because I didn't have a wig, I would wear a towel over my head. And I would do it in my room with the door locked so no one knew. And I would stand in front of the mirror and I would just dance and sing to Janet Jackson songs and just pop songs in general. And one day my mom walked in. She caught me like that. And I didn't know what to do. It was the first time she's ever saw me like that. And we made eye contact. And she just gave me this look. I can't explain the look she gave me, but it was this look of like disappointment, disgust, and anger. And she didn't say a word to me. She just immediately started hitting me. And when that happened, I didn't quite understand why she was doing it. I just knew that what I was doing was wrong. And I never did it again. As far as school went, I think the other kids always knew that I was different. They always knew that I was more feminine than other boys. So I got made fun of a lot, and I got treated weird. I was called goofy a lot because I didn't really fit into the stereotype of what you would think a young Black boy would be. And that was something I dealt with for most of my younger life, I guess going from elementary to middle school. But in middle school is when I finally started to realize that I might have something different with me, that I might actually have, I guess, some sort of connection with my feminine side in a way that wasn't normal for other boys. So I didn't really understand my sexuality. I knew I liked girls. I adored girls. And like my mom knew that I liked girls, but I always felt different. I didn't quite understand it. I always related to men who were more feminine. Like my favorite artists were Michael Jackson, Prince, Elton John, Boy George, George Michaels. My favorite wrestler was Shawn Michaels. And I just kind of like related more to the feminine element of men, how they felt freer to me. David Bowie. I love David Bowie. I can say that my favorite character in media at the time when I was younger was the black gay nerd from Revenge of the Nerds. I just related more to the androgynous, gender-bending kind of character that I did anyone else. So when I got a little older in middle school, I decided to really go to my mom for advice on my sexuality because I didn't understand my sexuality. The idea of masculinity was so tied to the ideal of your sexuality that I didn't really know how to deal with the fact that I liked girls, but I felt more feminine at times. So I asked my mom if I was gay or not, or if she thought I was gay or not. And the answer she gave me was that I can't be gay. So I asked her why. Like, out of curiosity, how did she know I'm not gay? And her answer was because if I was gay, it would kill my dad. Listening to this in modern times, you're going to have feelings about my mom. And I totally understand. But the thing is, my mom went through a lot of stuff in her life, and she went through a lot of abuse, which I would get to another day. But it really did shape the way that she thought about feminine men. And her religion and all really did affect how she viewed homosexuality. So there's a lot of stuff going on with that. It's a lot to unpack. But my mom was mostly supportive throughout my life on everything else I did. But as a younger person, I was more feminine. I was more trying to be myself. She wasn't the best for that. I'll just say that. So there was a feeling to toughen up, become someone else, to really be masculine as much as possible. I had no idea how to be masculine. The only thing I knew about masculinity was movies, 80s movies that I grew up watching, like Rambo and Rocky and stuff like that. So I didn't know anything. So I remember trying to have a conversation with my dad because my dad he was very masculine, but it was a lot of toxic masculinity. I didn't understand what that was at the time. So I didn't really know how to connect with him, and he wouldn't really spend time with me that much. He would spend time with his friends and all. So I would crash their little drinking parties they had in the front yard, and I would try to connect with them. And I would say things that were very cringy, but at the time, I didn't know how to be a man, and 80s movies were the only thing I knew. So I remember one time I crashed one of his little drinking parties, and I asked him, in front of his friends, trying to like relay to be a dude. I was like, hey, what's your favorite way to kill a man? And it was cringy. And he just kind of looked at me like, what the hell is he talking about? And just sent me in the house away from his friends because I was kind of being very embarrassing. But it was all I knew. I grew up on Sly Stallone and Jean-Claude Van Damme. I didn't really know anything. But after that, I started realizing that I needed to kind of figure out who I am in order to get away from the teasing and, the trolling I was getting as a kid. Because, kids can tell. They can immediately tell that there's something different about you, that you don't fit in with the rest of them. Especially if you're going to a mostly black school and you're dealing with kids who are more sure of themselves than you. So you're trying to really just imitate what they're doing and try to be like them. It just comes off as inauthentic because it wasn't who I was. High school was when I actually kind of sort of figured out who I was a little more. I kind of grew into this low-key goth phase I was going through that I never really quite got out of. And I got a girlfriend, and that was great. Had a couple of girlfriends in high school, but the biggest thing is I started a metal band because I had all this aggression and anger inside of me. I needed to get it out. I didn't know how to express it. So becoming a musician, playing in a metal band, it was one of those things where I felt like I belonged to something. But after high school, I kind of reverted back to the way I was at first. I was never really quite feminine the way I used to be. It would still come out a lot. People could still tell. But I put on this persona of being this very tough guy and this metalhead. And eventually I started doing things that I think was like subconscious that was coming out that I was unaware of, but it was just coming out on its own. And I started performing in wigs and dresses and lipstick. And my way of justifying it was that I was secure with myself. So I would do this because I thought it was funny. And it would trigger people and make people angry and stuff. But the truth is, I actually liked it. I didn't really admit to myself that I liked it. But it was something that I did. And I kind of came back to it for a while. And I always felt like I needed to experiment with myself. Different hairstyles, different hair colors, piercings, stuff like that. I really tried to be someone else, but at the same time, I felt like the true me was always coming out. It always was there. It always felt like I needed to be more than what I was trying to force myself to be. So fast forward more, out of high school, still doing the band stuff as an adult. The band thing is going well. We eventually break up. We actually play shows and all this stuff, but that's a totally different story. Um, we break up, and I had to go into real life, normal life. And I didn't know how to process that. Like, who am I in the corporate world? So I made myself more corporate, more masculine as much as possible. And it wasn't until I was an adult that my dad started to really connect with me. Because my dad, he dropped out of school when he was 9 years old. And my mom dropped out of school when she was in middle school. So they didn't have the best education. They didn't know how to raise a child like me. And my dad couldn't relate to me while I was a kid, but he related to me more as an adult. He knew how to talk to a man, not a boy. So he started teaching me stuff and his way of life that kind of led me down a path of becoming more of a jerk, if I'm being honest with you. I was very much a toxic guy who saw problems by punching holes in walls, who really didn't know how to control his anger. And I really leaned into the ideal of being masculine as much as possible. Growing a giant beard, which is funny, hindsight. But trying to look more like a hood thug, if I'm being honest with you. Because I didn't really know how to connect with people. I wanted to look as hard as hell. I didn't. Truthfully, if I'm really being honest with you, I was much harder as a child while I was being myself than I was going through my adulthood, trying to fit in, to trying to look hard. Like when I was a kid, I was hanging out with the Crips, stuff like that, being my normal feminine self, and that was fine. But as an adult, I needed to put on this persona as like someone who was more tougher than what he was. And I started to believe the hype. And I started to be against anything that was feminine. I'll say it straight up. I wasn't the best when it came to women. I was kind of a jerk. I was kind of a womanizer because I was taught that's how you're supposed to be, from my dad, who was also a womanizer. Around that time when he started taking me under his wing and teaching me how to be a man, my mom had already passed away. And he was already kind of like in that mode of being, just openly toxic. So I was drinking a lot, hanging out with my friends, trying to hook up with women all the time, and just really trying to be a ladies' man and like one of those guys who, I don't know, if you're a woman, you know the type. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't really have to go into too much of a detail about it, but I was very insecure. I was very internally homophobic, where I wanted to check myself and make sure I didn't do anything that may seem kind of gay. And I really did try to be the best straight, tough, masculine guy I could be. And that was what it was like for me to be a man, a black man at that time, as far as like what I was told how I should be. And I just went along with it, and I did embrace it because I felt it was easier to do that than to try to be myself, because myself was someone who a lot of people rejected. So it was just a lot easier to be overly masculine to the point where it became very toxic. Because we actually hold on to this ideal of homosexuality is linked to your masculinity. So we try our best to make sure we don't display anything that may come off as gay or may come off as feminine, because it goes against our ideal of what masculinity was. And it was not the best time for me, but also it was just the way that we thought about things. Because we really do process things through the ideal of if you're gay or if you're feminine, then you're not a real man and you're lesser than. So we actually try to police ourselves, self-policing, to make sure that we don't do anything that may be considered gay to the point that it becomes a little ridiculous. A lot of things I dealt with my friends was going to the movies and having a seat in between us when we sat to watch a movie, just to make sure that people don't think we're gay, making sure that we talk a certain way, making sure that we don't sit a certain way, that we sit like a man. Everything was just coded towards like anything that may come off slightly feminine, even eating a hot dog, came off as gay to us, and gay means that we're not a man. We self-police and we police other men, and we make sure that other men aren't doing things that are feminine or what we consider to not be masculine. And it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of anger in it, like getting unnecessarily angry at someone for whoever they love, because it reflects back on us. Because the way we see things is trans people, gay people, or any kind of queer people, it's not really hate towards them. It's more of the fact that they're happy with who they are. And because they're happy with who they are, it really challenges the way we view masculinity, because we have to look at masculinity in a certain way because we were taught to look at it in a certain way. And when that's challenged, we start to really look at those things and not really analyze ourselves as in like looking at how we believe things or how we view things, but we look outward and say, this person does not reflect what I was taught. Therefore, if this person could be happy being who they are, then it makes me wonder if what I was taught and what I believe is wrong. And I can't admit that what I believe is wrong. Therefore, I'd rather this person go away. I was never homophobic or transphobic or anything like that. So I always supported queer artists, and I always just enjoyed the ideal of being free and being who you are. But I was unable to do that. So I was stuck in this mindset of I need to be the most masculine person ever. But I was someone who really policed other men and how they act, and policed myself and how I acted, because I consider myself not homophobic, but I really did do some toxic masculinity stuff. There's also an element of racism connected to my internal homophobia that comes down to me working in a predominantly white field, and the fact that I grew up in a Black surrounding where, with Black culture, unfortunately, a lot of homophobia is still within it. Like some kind of disease that's slowly keeping us from progressing. And I didn't know how to be a queer Black man. That was too difficult for me because I had the weight of my whole race on me, which I think sounds ridiculous for someone who's not Black, but there's a way of seeing Black people that's been pushed forward in the media, and we had to fight against that and show that we're not like that we're not some kind of hive-minded, negative thing that the media portrays us as. It show our individuality, it show our Blackness in a way that really just highlights Black excellence. But at the same time, I had to be a strong Black man. I couldn't be a feminine Black man. And it was just a lot of things that goes along with that. Just trying to figure out who you are, trying to figure out where you fit in a society who already believes who you are by their ideal of who they think you are. And you're trying to prove who you are. But that goes against what they view. So it's kind of the same thing of, you can't be who you are as a man sometimes because of the policing that men do to other men. And it's something that we do to ourselves and we blame other people for, particularly women. We try to blame women for our own problems a lot. That's something that just happens, unfortunately. That comes along with, the toxic masculinity and all that, and just misogynistic views and just a lot of things that are ingrained into us as to what a man is. And it's so incorrect. And it's so toxic. And it's not how you're supposed to act as a person. It's not how you're supposed to treat other people. But we believe it because we're taught that. And we're rewarded for it by society. There is another element to it that I don't really want to touch on, but I feel like I need to touch on it because it's something that if I don't mention it, it's going to be me just glossing over something that really does affect it as well. There are a lot of women who do hold up misogyny as well, unfortunately. They've been programmed just like us to fall into the ideal of what a man should be, and they fall into the idea of what they think a woman should be, and they uphold that same view. And the reason I'm bringing this up because I'm starting to see a lot more homophobic women out there, and it really upsets me because it makes it harder for men who are trying to get out of that way of thinking to get out of that way of thinking. If a man does something that's clearly something an incel would do, and a woman responds back with saying that he's gay or he's on a DL, it does more damage to women than it does men. Not only is it homophobic, which is weird because I see a lot of queer women do it too. Like, I don't understand why a queer woman would still uphold that toxic misogyny and homophobic view. But I've seen women do it where anything that happens with a man that's clearly just a guy being an incel, they turn it into he's on the DL, he's secretly gay or whatever. And doing that, it gives men who are incels, who are subscribed to that whole toxic masculinity thing, a reason to continue to be toxic and being awful. It doesn't really justify it. It doesn't really truly give them a reason to do it. It gives them an excuse. There are some men who are already going to blame women for the problems with men. And we need less women giving them an excuse to point to justify to themselves the things that they're doing. Because men don't take responsibility for ourselves. We don't. It's always someone else's fault. And we need women who do that to stop so that men have nowhere else to point to when we're not dealing with our problems. But that's a whole different thing. But I'll just say this. It doesn't help. And I see a lot of black women doing it, unfortunately. And it doesn't really help when you're doing this to a group of people who already have a built-in internalized homophobia within them through the community. And they're just going to just be awful still. It's very hard. It's very hard to break that. It's very, very hard to break the internalized homophobia that you have in yourself. And it's very easy to blame someone else for it or to blame someone else for your actions. But the moment I broke it, when I finally started to really heal and get it out of me, it was the day I bought lipstick for the very first time. And let me tell you, baby, that conditioning was very strong. It was very strong. I was terrified to buy lipstick to the point that it's pretty much comical. So around this point, I was in a better state in my life. I started healing for some of the stuff I've been through. And I started to really realize that I needed to really be myself now. At that point in my life, I had changed my entire personality to fit into the corporate world. And I no longer cared about fitting into that corporate world anymore. So I started to try to really figure out, who am I? With all the trauma, with all the things of people telling me what I need to be, how I need to act, who I am, my sexuality, all that. With all the baggage of being a strong black man, with all the baggage of just being a man, who am I? And I made a deal with myself. I would start doing things that I thought I would never do and seeing if I like it. Doing things outside the box of masculinity or anything. There are little things I always felt I wanted to do that I couldn't do. Like, I always loved stuffed animals, and I didn't want to have stuffed animals because that's not what a man does. I wanted a doll collection. I always thought the Monster High dolls were really, really cool. And I didn't want to get dolls because how do you justify that? So I thought to myself, I always wanted to try to wear goth makeup. While I was in high school, I did wear lipstick once or twice. And I did wear eyeliner, which I wasn't really good at doing eyeliner, so I kind of stopped eventually. I always painted my nails off and on. I painted black because, At least that's masculine. But I never really did try to express myself and try to go for a full makeup goth look. So I wanted to do it. I wanted to give it a shot. I felt like, okay, I have some black eyeshadow that someone else left me, and I want to try some black lipstick. So I need to go buy some lipstick to try this, but I need to come up with a story. So that way, if anyone saw me buying lipstick, they wouldn't think I was gay. I'm pretty sure no one cared. But at that time, I thought that everyone would care because that's how we're programmed. We're programmed to do things because we're so afraid if someone sees us doing something feminine, they would call us out, like as if everyone's policing us all at the same time. So I wanted to make sure that I had an excuse to buy lipstick. So I figured I would make up a fictional imaginary daughter. So if I went to the store and picked up some lipstick, if someone asked me why I had lipstick, why I was buying lipstick, I would say it's for my daughter. That's how ingrained that internalized homophobia was in me. I was so afraid that someone would just stop me from buying lipstick and start questioning me. And it's really weird. I came up with this story. I have a small goth daughter, and I was buying her lipstick. I'm her dad. So I go into the store. I went to Walmart of all places because I wanted to just get into a place in and out as fast as possible. I did try it like a Walgreens or something like that. They didn't have black lipstick. I thought everything else is too queer for me. I can't do that. It's too girly. So I went inside Walmart and I went into the beauty supply area. I went straight in there and I looked around for lipstick to see if I could find a lipstick that was free. Because, certain Walmarts, I don't know how it's like in your city, but certain Walmarts, they do have some of the makeup and stuff, and they're locked away. You have to get someone to help you. So I tried to find one that was kind of out in the open, like the ones that no one cares about, the cheap ones. So I find some cheap black lipstick, and I'm like, okay, I got this. And I start thinking to myself, I have to check out at this little area because Walmart has their own little. You can't really check out beauty supply stuff with the regular cashiers. You have to check it out with the cashier that's there. So I was thinking to myself, maybe I'm too young to have a daughter who would be goth. So maybe I should make up another thing. It's for my sister. I started coming up with these different ideas of how to lie if someone asked me why I was buying lipstick. And then eventually I decided, screw it. I'm just going to pocket it. So I pocketed it. And I snuck out the beauty supply area. But I did pay for it because I'm a good boy. So I went to self-checkout and I scanned it and I got the hell out of there as fast as I could. I was terrified. My heart was beating so fast. I was afraid that someone would know I had it in my pocket because I took out the bag and put it in my pocket so no one even know. It was so absurd and so hilarious when I look back at it. And I tried it on and I sent it to a friend. She was very receptive of queer people. And I didn't quite know I was queer yet at that time. There were hints. there were plenty of hints, but I didn't quite know yet. So I figured she wouldn't judge me. So I put on some black lipstick. I tried to line my eyes. I was terrible at it. I couldn't do the top part of my eyelids, so I did just the bottom. And I sent her a picture asking her what did she think, because I kind of talked to her about it a little beforehand. And she encouraged me. And I was like, okay, it's cool that she encouraged me. I'm not going to ever post this, but, it's just something that I did just to see if I liked it or not, trying new things. So I started messing around with eyeshadow and just using black eyeshadow and black lipstick. And I figured, okay, no one really checks my Instagram. No one cares about my Instagram. So I'll just post a picture on my Instagram. No one knows who I am. Doesn't really matter. And I'll just see how people respond to it and stuff. But I forgot that my Instagram was connected to my Facebook. So when I posted my pictures, it went to Facebook. And I started getting a lot of notifications from people. I can't tell you how terrified I was seeing my phone blow up with notifications from Facebook and realizing that people have seen me wear black eyeshadow and black lipstick. No foundation or anything like that. Just black eyeshadow and black lipstick. So being terrified, I was like, okay, people are going to think I'm gay now. People are going to think I'm gay. Just freaking out, being scared of how people are going to react to it. They internalize homophobia. And I checked my Facebook. It was nothing but women giving me advice on how to make my eyeshadow better. No one cared. That whole time, no one cared. And as I started to explore eventually who I am, I realized that I became more comfortable in my own skin than I've ever been in my life. And I realized that even though I kind of fought it a little, I'll admit there was still a little bit of it in me because I started using different types of eyeshadow and people would tell me, try foundation. And I'm like, I'll never try foundation. That's too girly. And they're like, try a wig. I'll never try a wig. That's too girly. And I kept fighting it. And then every time I would cave in and think, I'm curious about this. I should try it. I realized, I really like this. And then eventually there was one moment where I looked in the mirror and I was like, there you are. That's you. That's exactly who you were. This is who you were always going to be. If it wasn't for all the interference you have to deal with in your life, from your dad, from your mom, from society, from the view of you being a black man, from the view of you being a man, if you didn't have all this trauma, all this stuff dumped on you that you didn't ask for, that was pushed upon you, with no interference for anyone else from the outside, if you were just allowed to just grow into the person that you were always meant to be, this is who you were supposed to be. And I've never been afraid since. I came out of the closet in 2025. But by that time, it wasn't even a closet anymore. I mean, people already knew. I was pretty much open with who I was. I just never said it. And only reason I identified my sexuality openly in 2025 was because queer people were being attacked. And I wanted to talk about queer people being attacked, but I didn't want questions about my sexuality. So I just flat out told people, hey, this is my sexuality. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about these things that are happening in this world. I came out with no fanfare. It was just, I just threw it out there. And more people were excited for me than I was for myself because I didn't even put any thought into coming out of the closet. I just threw it out there. And some of my friends already knew anyway. So it just kind of came down to me just doing it for myself and moving on. The fact that I was able to go from being afraid that people might think I'm queer to just throwing out I'm queer and moving on in my life. It's such a big thing, but it shows how secure I am with myself as a person compared to who I was before. So I want to say this to you, especially for men listening. It's okay to be yourself. It doesn't matter what people think. I've wasted so much of my life being afraid of what people might think about me, only to realize that I don't really care what people think. And it doesn't really affect me what they think because it's something they have to process themselves. They're projecting how they feel onto you because you being yourself and living your life authentically challenges the way they view things. But they're not your problem. The best thing for you to do is to live your life. I'm not saying you have to wear makeup or become a drag queen or anything like that. I'm not saying that you have to be queer to be happy or anything like that. You could be a straight man or a straight person and just not fear being seen as feminine or masculine if you're a woman, or anything if you're non-binary, and just be who you are. It's all projection, and you should just live your life the best way you feel you can and in a way that makes you happy. No one cares at the end. And only people who do care are people who haven't done it for themselves. They haven't accepted themselves yet. So if you listen to this, guys, eat that hot dog. Eat that corn dog. Eat that banana. Don't turn it sideways. Go full deep throat on that banana. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if people think you're queer or gay or anything like that. Queer black men, you're still valid. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. Black excellence comes from how you put yourself out there. It doesn't come from who you're in love with or who your personal sexual preference is. If you're queer, live your best queer life. If you're straight, live your best straight life. Stop worrying about what do people say, what do people think about you, how they view you, because they really don't matter. What matters more than anything in this world is how you feel about yourself. So you got to get that internalized homophobia out of you. And once you do, once you work on it, you just get it out of you. Just chip at it over time as much as you can. And really accept yourself. I promise you, you would be far more happier. So, I'm going to go cuddle with my stuffed animals now. You take care, babe. I love you. Be good.